It's not often that you hear of a record company being destroyed by success, but that's exactly what happened to one of the most important blues, jazz, and soul companies in America. The music they recorded was subject to legal issues following the label's demise and has been unavailable for years. The centerpiece of today's video is all about the rise and fall of VJ Records. Now before we start, let's be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and push that notification bell to be sure you won't miss out on any more content. Now, without further ado, let's cue that intro. This story begins in 1953 when Vivian Carter Bracken and her husband James borrowed $500 from a pawnbroker in order to record a group that they had discovered in Gary, Indiana, where they operated a record store. The couple took their initials V and J, and boom, VJ Records was born. Vivian got her brother Calvin Carter and named him the label's A&R. Right away, the label had success. Early on, the label had blues singers. This is Jimmy Reed, Memphis Slim, and John Lee Hooker, also having rhythm and blues vocal groups. The Spaniels, the Dells, and the El Dorados. The label had so much success in the beginning, so much so that they leased the record Baby It's You by the Spaniels to another label for distribution. It was a top 10 hit, and by the time the group's second record came out a year later, the Brackens were on firmer financial ground and had a crossover hit on their hands. Naturally, this drew attention, so when a Chicago slaughterhouse worker named Jimmy Reed stepped into their store and asked to be recorded after being turned down by Chess, they set up a session. His first record failed to chart, but his second was a top 10 R&B smash. With that, VJ was on the map. Another doo-wop group, the El Dorados, took off soon afterward with At My Front Door, also known as Crazy Little Mama, which was a top 10 crossover hit, and the Brackens moved their operation to Chicago. There was talent all over the place, and Chess, which was located just across the street from VJ for a while, wasn't taking it all. Perhaps because Vivian had a radio background, she was able to get Ewart Abner, Chicago's top promotion man, to join her team. While Chess continued to focus on blues, VJ knew there was something new happening, and in 1958 it discovered a group that not only recorded a top 10 hit right out of the box, but also became deeply associated with Chicago for the next 40 years, the Dells. If the Dells were a harbinger of soul music, the other group the label recorded that year was already making the transition. Jerry Butler and the Impressions made For Your Precious Love, but soon went their separate ways. Butler stayed on to become another VJ hit machine. Not that the label gave up on classic doo-wop, recording one of the great cult masterpieces of the genre. In the 1960s, the label became a major soul label with Jerry Butler, Gene Chandler, Dee Clark, and Betty Everett having hit singles on both the pop and R&B charts. VJ was also the first label to nationally issue a record by the Pips, who became Gladys Knight and the Pips in 1962 when they moved to Fury Records. VJ had significant success with pop and rock and roll acts, such as the Four Seasons, their first non-black act, and the Beatles. Through a license agreement with EMI Records, VJ was able to acquire the rights to a number of the early recordings made by the Beatles. This was possible due to the fact that Capitol Records, which is EMI's American subsidiary, initially declined to issue the Beatles records in the United States. By then, VJ was one of America's top labels with a strong jazz catalog. The first hint of disaster came in 1962 with their biggest record to date, the Four Seasons hit. Sherry was so big that VJ's owners found themselves without the money to pay for pressing more copies of the records, although the label stumbled along for a while. The worst thing it could have done would be to sign another hit group, but it did, and what a group Capitol Records already had passed on the option to release the Beatles in America, but the Brackens jumped at the chance. Please Please Me and From Me to You both came out on VJ, followed by an album at the end of 1963. The Four Seasons and the Beatles both went to greener pastures, and VJ wound up in court. In the mid-1960s, VJ signed the former successful child singer Jimmy Boyd, known for the hit I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus. The company ventured into folk music with Hoyt Axton and also picked up Little Richard, who recorded his specialty hits and recorded I Don't Know What You've Got, But It's Got Me. The label also saw R&B success with Don Covey, Bernard Purdie, Ronnie Miller, Billy Preston, and Jimi Hendrix before Hendrix became successful on his own. VJ's jazz line accounted for a small portion of the company's releases, but recorded such artists as Eddie Harris, Wynton Kelly, Lee Morgan, and Wayne Shorter. The AR for the label's jazz releases was Sid McCoy. The company also had a major gospel line, recording such acts as the Staple Singers, the famous Boyer Brothers, the Argo Singers, Swan Silvertones, the Caravans, Dorothy Love Coast, and the Gospel Harmonettes, and Maceo Woods. VJ even released a comedy LP with records by Dick Gregory. VJ's releases were initially unsuccessful, but they quickly became big hits after the British invasion began in early 1964 with 2.6 million Beatles singles sold in a single month. Cash flow issues, allegedly caused by Ewart Abner's use of the business treasury to settle personal gambling debts, led to the company's active demise. VJ had been forced to temporarily halt operations in the second half of 1963, resulting in royalty conflicts with the Four Seasons and EMI. The Four Seasons then left VJ for Philips Records, while EMI's Capitol Records acquired the US rights to both the Beatles and Frank Ifield. Other VJ subsidiary labels included Interphone, Oldies 45 for reissues, and Tolly and Abner Records, an early subsidiary label founded in 1958. VJ also distributed Champion Records, Rick Hall's Fame Records, and for a time, the Memphis labels Gold Wax Records and Johnny Vincent's Ace Records. VJ returned to Chicago in 1965. After a year in Los Angeles, liens were imposed on VJ assets in Los Angeles following Pi Records' legal action for non-payment of royalties. In August of 1966, VJ Records filed for bankruptcy. The label's assets were later purchased by label executives Betty Chiappetta and Randy Wood, not Dot Records founder, who renamed the company VJ International. The Four Seasons library was not included in the sale because the band secured a contract language that stated that in the event of bankruptcy, the catalog would be returned to the band, which has kept it ever since. From 1967 to 1972, VJ was limited to selling some of the inventory on hand when the company went under and leasing or licensing the VJ masters to Buddha Records, who came out with the first generation series, and Springboard International, who issued dozens of albums featuring VJ material on their subsidiary label, Upfront. The label was revived under new management in 1982 as a dance and R&B label, but closed down in 1986. In the mid-late 1980s, a one-hour independent documentary film titled Cradle of Rock and Roll aired on PBS soon after its completion. It covered the history of VJ and Chess Records in Chicago, which helped to begin a revival of some interest in VJ's history and catalog. In 1986, MOTOWN licensed 26 of VJ's soul, blues and R&B hits for a CD compilation called Hits from the legendary VJ Records. Under the management of Michelle Taylor, the company was reactivated in 1998 as the VJ Limited Partnership. Its main office is located in Redding, Connecticut. In July 2014, its catalog was acquired by Concord Music Group. The sale was facilitated by Minneapolis film producer Scott McLean. The VJ record story is featured on the documentary series Profiles of African American Success. Now, before we go, I have a question for you all. What is your favorite act and song coming out of VJ?